welcome back to my desk. Tonight we are continuing the 100 book series with book 34. Book 34 is Survive the Night by Danielle Vega. Let me jump in. I'll tell you what it's about, and then we can talk about it. Just back from rehab, Casey regrets letting her friends Shauna, Julie, and Aya talk her into coming to survive the night. An all-night underground rave in New York City's subway tunnel, surrounded by frightening drugs and menacing strangers. Casey doesn't think Survive the Night could get any worse until she comes across Julie's mutilated body in a dank black subway tunnel, red-eyed rats nibbling at her fingertips. Casey thought she was just off with some guy. No one could hear her getting torn apart over the sound of the pulsing music. And by the time they get back to the party, everyone is gone. Desperate for help, Casey and her friends find themselves running through the putrid subway tunnels, searching for a way out. But every manhole is sealed shut, and every noise echoes eerily in the dark, reminding them that they're not alone. They're being hunted, trapped underground with someone or something out to get them. Casey can't help but listen to Aya's terrified refrain. We're all gonna die down here. What do you think? Sounds spooky. So this book falls into the horror thriller genre. It is young adult, mid to late teens audience, I think. That's the target audience, I think. It's pretty good. Let me tell you a little more about it. So, it's told in the first person, and that was something that I haven't had quite a while. For books that I've read, it was just odd. And when I preview the next books after this, that is something that happens in those books, so it's kind of a little theme I'm in right now of books. But it has a sense of realism in it about addiction and what it's like to go to rehab and come back and kind of try and fit into your life again. At least in my opinion it does. I don't know. I don't have that personal experience, but I think it paints that picture quite well. The struggle that someone would feel and the kind of alienation, judgment, and you're kind of a pariah to people. They don't know how to talk to you or how to treat you, or they treat you with kid gloves. So the main character, Casey, has a hard time readjusting. She doesn't know how to interact with her pre-addiction friends. And she kind of falls back in with the crowd who were there as she evolved into the addiction that she had. And there's a kind of a lack of accountability or an acknowledgement of accountability on her part. That's a journey that she kind of goes through the book, of not owning up to her addiction, and not realizing that she's kind of putting herself back in that pattern, and then all hell breaks loose. There's bad influences and peer pressure and kind of what it's like to kind of yield to peer pressure and how that is from like a teenage girl's perspective. So if you're not and have never been a teenage girl, then that's something new you could learn about reading this book. It also is a book about betrayal and mistrust and distrust and self-esteem. All of that. And then there's also this crazy murder and setting. I think the author does a really great job of distinguishing characters, creating distinct character identities that are easily identifiable to the reader. So you're never confused when there's a large cast of characters, 4, 5, 6 people in a book. You can sometimes start confusing them if the author doesn't do a great job of really giving each character their own identity and unique habits and speech patterns. And this author does a great job of making sure the reader doesn't get too muddled down in trying to figure out who each person is. Then she also is really good at building suspense and tension and kind of putting you on that precipice of the edge of your seat. So those are all really good elements in this book. Now, to talk about the storyline for a minute. It takes a real weird turn in the last half. And if I had have read this on the back, I think it mentions, maybe not there, maybe it mentions somewhere, I thought it mentioned horror somewhere, but I wasn't expecting the kind of horror-esque aspect or right angle turn it takes. I was expecting thriller, I was expecting, violence, danger, but I wasn't expecting the twist. And it kind of, I struggled to make it fit a little bit, and it doesn't ruin the story. It was just not the story I expected, so I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I guess it just wasn't what I expected, and that doesn't make it bad. It just makes it not what I expected. enjoy thriller horror books, then it's still a good book. The twist is, I don't know, it was just strange. And I'm not going to spoil it, because if you want to read this book, then I want you to experience that as you read it. It's still good. It's still a good book, you know. For its audience, I would put that caveat in. I would say it's not quite at the level of something I would normally read in this genre, that is targeted at a purely adult audience, you know. So that is where I'm sitting with it, I guess. I'm not really sure. I'd be interested to read more by this author, and I think that maybe she just writes teen YA stuff. There are 2 books advertised on the back. The Merciless and The Merciless 2. I'm not sure if she's written anything else or just those 3. I've never heard of this author before I picked up this book, and I will admit that I was drawn in by the cover art. I think it's very striking. It's a little bit hard to see the vibrancy. This is a violent hot pink, and this skull is sparkly. And I am a sucker for cover art, and also the description made the book seem really interesting. There were a few weird little things that I found annoying. So the first one is the cover, which I just said drew me into the book. And I don't know if this is a reference I don't get. It could be like a rave type thing. The skull. But outside of being visually appealing, it has no relation to the story's content at all. None. And so that's a pet peeve. I like to talk about cover art in my reviews because I think they are a large aspect of what draws a reader into a book. And they send a message of what the story is about. And I don't think that this does that. And I don't know what I would have expected it to convey. Before reading it, you know, but I just know that post reading it, it doesn't really make sense, other than the fact that it's visually appealing. The second thing is when synopses don't match up to books, and in general, this does, but you'll notice that they made a very specific choice with how they did that in this book, and they have a kind of grimy brick subway wall here with kind of graffitied on it, "We're all gonna die down here." And that quote specifically, Casey can't help but listen to Aya's terrified refrain, "We're all gonna die down here." Aya never actually says those words in the book. Now, she does say, we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. Many times. But she never specifically says, we're all gonna die down here. And so, little things like that, if you're particular about the things that you read, and it just seems like an oversight. And I understand that saying we're all gonna die down here is a specific word choice, and maybe it was originally in the book, and it somehow got edited out. But I remember waiting. I was waiting and waiting and waiting to read those words, and they never came. And so, as a pet peeve, if you've read this book and they are somewhere in here and I have missed them, then I apologize for making this a sticking point for me. But I couldn't find them. So, that's the review for this book. I hope I have told you enough so you can decide if it's something that you would want to read. Oh. My candle's really burning down there. All the wax is dripping. Okay, that's it. That was book 34. Now, let me preview for you the next book. I'm actually missing one of them, so I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. And you will notice I said one of them is missing because the next review is going to be books 35, 6, and 7. If you watched my book haul part 2, then you will recognize these books. They are the 3 Fear Street books that I picked up. So we're returning to Fear Street. That pun was intended. We have the one original Fear Street book from the original series, and then we have 2 newer publications from the Return to Fear Street series, The Wrong Girl and Drop Dead Gorgeous. So I thought, rather than read them all individually, because this book is really thin, so I could never have done a full review on just this book. I mean, I could have, but it would kind of been pointless and short. So I thought it might be a better idea to compare and contrast the 3 of them. So the old original series book to the new ones, which is a bit of an unfair comparison in a direct comparison sense, because these books are a lot more substantial and they're a different audience, but I'm gonna make it work. So that's what you can watch out for next, is a return to Fear Street on the nostalgia train. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for joining me for this one, guys. And I'll see you on Fear Street.